Hello, I'm Darren Crapo, and I'd like to welcome you to the first episode of Planet Plus. It's a bit of a spin-off of UFO Planet, but we're going to do things a little bit differently now. We're going to have a lot more topics that we did in the past. On today's program, though, we have Steve Barone, who is going to be joining me, and we're going to be talking about a lot of Steve's recent activities on his Facebook group, UFOs in the USA. I'm also going to ask Steve about John Podesta's tweet where he regrets not doing more with disclosure. And we're going to do all of that right away. But first, have a look at this. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. We have an absolutely fascinating program here, and we have some fascinating things to speak about, and some of those things that we're going to speak about are to do with, obviously, ET. And we're going to talk to one of the leading groups in the United States of America, and we're going to talk to the leader of that group, Steve Barone, and Steve's going to tell us all about that. Also, near the end of the program, we're going to take a look at the backside of the moon. So if you've been wondering what that looks like, you're going to want to stick around after the interview, because we have a clip from the Goddard Space Center that shows us the backside of the moon. But it's time now to bring Steve into the conversation and turn on his mic. Steve, how you doing today?
Hey, Darren, I'm doing great. A little bit overcast for Las Vegas, but everything's going really well.
Well, when you're in the casinos winning all those big bucks, you don't really care what it's like outside anyway, do you?
I don't go to the casinos except for the buffets.
No, you leave that for the tourists to come and check things out for you and leave their money. I always tell people when you go to Vegas, don't expect to bring the money back that you went with. That's the whole reason that it exists, is to separate us from our money. But we're glad that it goes to guys like you that live there. Steve, I was noticing that you have a pretty awesome picture, a couple of pictures that are online, and I'm just going to see if I can find those here. And there are a couple of pictures of you when you had a lot longer hair, looked like a few years back. And I just thought it was interesting when I looked at the photos, because I thought, you know, this doesn't really look like a guy that a few years later that would be into the UFO world. So let's just go back in time a little bit here and talk about, you know, your past. Back in the old days when you were in your teens, were you ever interested in UFOs? Was that something that came to your mind?
Oh, absolutely, Darren. I've always been interested in UFOs. And I'm very flattered that you think that's just a few years. I'm thinking more like about 35 years.
Well, that's just a few. Seriously, that's just a few.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, yes, I've always believed in UFOs. The long hair was a result of being a kid growing up and having parents that never would let any of us kids have long hair. And then I went into the Navy, and of course you're not going to have long hair there. So when I got out, I just decided to let it grow a bit, but that was actually pretty much a brief time in my life. I think I'd look pretty silly right now if I had long hair.
Well, we just got a couple of technical difficulties there, working out some of the new buttons. I apologize that I just pre-programmed the studio this morning, and I couldn't remember how to turn my mic on and switch it back to me for a second there. But you look pretty good with long hair, but long hair definitely is, on men, isn't in style anymore. But you do have that mustache and beard going there, though, and that's always in style. So You've had a couple of UFO sightings now. I had you on the program once before last year, Steve, and we spoke about those sightings. The first sighting was kind of exciting for you to see your first event, and that happened in Canada, of all places. Can you tell us just a little bit about that one?
Yeah, Darren. That was on October 13th, 2011, and you know how it is when you remember dates like that because it was a phenomenal day. We were about 4 hours out of Halifax, Nova Scotia on a cruise. The ship was headed back to New York City, and we had just eaten dinner. Even though it was October, it was still pretty cold, but I am a smoker. And we got into our cabin. I went outside and lit up a cigarette and was sitting there. Couldn't see anything. It was just pitch dark. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, here it comes. Just a dull glow, no farther away than 200 feet. This thing just goes by the ship. When it got towards the back of the ship, it took a 45-degree angle turn down, and I assumed it was going to go into the ocean, but it didn't. It just went pretty much, wave top, and curved around the back of the ship, and it disappeared. And so, I was stunned. I didn't have time to think about anything. So I waited out there, I'd say at least 20 more minutes, hoping that it would come back, but it never did. And the odd thing about it, Darren, was that it didn't have any lights at all. The only reason I think I could see it was our cruise ship was lit up like a Christmas tree, and my assumption is that the lights from the cruise ship are what was illuminating this object. But it was stunning. Like I say, in my mind, it was probably the size of a school bus, but fatter in the middle. And from that moment forward, all of my beliefs in UFOs were confirmed.
And so, Steve, what you're saying is that kind of is what, you'd always had the interest, but that's what really got you motivated to do a little bit more. Would that be a fair statement?
Actually, it was the next one after that, Darren, because nothing happened again until April 16th of last year, when once again I was on my patio having a cigarette, and I caught these enormous red, ultra bright red lights passing by, and as soon as I stared at them, it was headed to the north from the south. It immediately reversed directions right in its own path, and it only did that for about 2 seconds. And as soon as it did that, it started going forward again, and by then I had already jumped up, and I realized I had my Galaxy telephone in my pocket, and I was pulling it out and fumbling, trying to get this thing started to take a video of it. Fortunately for me, I did get about 5 minutes, even though it was pretty shaky, because I'd never really used the video portion of the phone that much before. But in my mind, I knew that this was a chance to redeem myself with my wife, because she doesn't believe in UFOs, and I knew I had it on video, and I was just hoping that it turns out and that I could show her.
So after it turned out and you showed your wife, what were her opinions? Did they change at all? Was she a little bit more interested, or at least think you're less nuts?
Well, I know she doesn't think I'm nuts.
Well, that's good.
I think she probably thought I misidentified the things that I had seen, but she still doesn't really believe in aliens or anything like that. But she did acknowledge that that is extremely strange, and she couldn't identify it.
Well, it really gets you going, doesn't it? It gets you wound up, and you start to think, hey, maybe there's something more out here than what we're aware of. And so you would say that is what got you into wanting to create a group on Facebook. Is that fair? It
is, because in my family and my friends, I don't really have very many people that I can talk to about UFOs. Mm-hmm. You know, either they're not interested or they don't believe in it. But, you know, once you've seen something like that, you feel very compelled to talk about it because it's amazing. And I didn't have that. So what I did is I initially went out on Facebook and started joining a bunch of other UFO groups. And one by one, as I was participating in these groups, I found out that each one of them was not a good fit for me, because even though I do believe in UFOs, and I even filmed one at that point, I'm still pretty much of a skeptical kind of guy. You know, it takes a lot to convince me of things like Bigfoot, ghosts, sea monsters, you know, whatever. I need to have, you know, pretty good proof that those things really do exist. And I was seeing a lot of kind of, I don't know, over-the-top kind of things in some of these groups. So I thought, what the heck? I'm going to start one of my own, and it will be for people like me who have seen something or experienced something, but don't feel they have anyone to talk to. And just ordinary people, not, you know, people that think the earth is flat.
Exactly. Well, Steve, we're going to talk a little bit more about your group on Facebook. But first, we just need to pay a couple of bills and break for a commercial. We'll be right back. And we're back. Steve, thanks for sticking around with us. So let's talk a little bit more about your group here. Now, you call it UFOs in the USA, which you can't get a much better name than that, can you? Because that definitely covers what you're doing here. Could you tell us a little bit, like, how many people are in your group and how long you have been operating the site now?
Okay. The group is approximately 8 months old. I started it not long after my capture in April of last year. There's right now just over 5,600 members.
That is a lot of members.
All over the world.
And I know that you have some, well, I guess you would say, you have some royalty that is actually part of your group as well, don't you? You have some people with some names that we would recognize. Can you tell us who some of them are?
Oh, sure. I mean, I don't remember everybody right off the top of my head, because some of them might not be people that, you know, folks that aren't interested in UFOs would know. But definitely one of the biggest would be Jim Peniston of the Rendlesham Forest incident. He's actually the person that walked up and touched what we believe was probably some sort of downed probe that had symbols on the side and the whole bit. And he is a wonderful man that's just an ordinary Joe like the rest of us, and gets in and chats with the rest of us. But we have Peter Robbins. We have Daryl Sims, whom you have interviewed before, from, yes. I think it's called Uncovering Aliens. Mike Barra from Uncovering Aliens. And then we have an assortment of actual MUFON officials, people from MUFON. And then, of course, just people from all over the world, which is amazing. And I know the name is UFOs in the USA, but we want to hear from everybody around the world, because we're finding that many of the sightings and experiences that we hear about are universal, and they happen all over the world.
Yeah, not just in the United States, that's for sure. So now it's a closed group, and we should explain to viewers that being a closed group on Facebook means that you have to request membership, and then that membership is either granted or denied. But it also gives the moderators of the group the opportunity to remove people that are not sticking with the program per se. So do you guys have any controls in place? So, or what do you do if someone comes onto your site and they post something that is just way out there. Do you have a mechanism where you have some moderators that are looking after things?
Yes, we do. There are 8 of us that are administrators, and they're all people that I have come to trust just as much as I would somebody in my own family. Mm-hmm. When somebody requests to join, we do our best to go take a look at their personal page and see what kind of things they talk about. If they're hateful, if they're, into pornography or anything like that, if it's something you couldn't show, a 10-year-old, pretty much we don't want those people. But what we do is we monitor the group, and one of our moderators is there when we're all sleeping. He's over in Australia. But we keep a good eye on it, and we have basically 3 rules. One rule is no politics, another one is no religion, and number 3 is just be respectful and, talk to somebody like you're talking to their face and not over, a computer screen. Because it's important to me. People need to feel comfortable to be able to come in and open up. And, that's been one of my greatest rewards of all, is I can't tell you how many times we've had compliments that people come and actually open up for the first time. We won't accept any kind of ridicule whatsoever. We have enough of that outside of the group.
Yes, and I've seen you've actually had to deal with some of that. I was reading comments this morning on my channel on YouTube, and I noticed that you had some issues there in the past where you've had to deal with people. It's unfortunate. The way I see it, Steve, is when it comes to people that are negative or want to ridicule, or I guess online it's called trolling, right? You go around, you look for people to rip to pieces. And it's unfortunate that happens, but the UFO world seems to attract a large group of that. I've kind of found that if you just leave them alone, they go away. And they don't seem so interested in bothering you anymore, and then they just find other places to go. But so there is a mechanism in place there, and that's fantastic, because you need to do that. You need to keep control. What kind of information are you seeing people post? Is it pretty fascinating stuff that they're just redigging up, or is it kind of a mixture of everything?
It's a mixture of everything, but the most fascinating of all is naturally their own experiences. We've run into a number of people who have been abducted, people who have seen things on multiple occasions, people who have marks on their bodies that are unexplained. And like I said, Darren, the ultimate thing is when they are able to actually finally open up and express something that happened to them that they've been holding inside their entire life.
Sorry there, do you have a lot of people that are sharing personal experiences with you that, that they normally maybe wouldn't have shared in the past because now they're a member of a group? Do you think that helps bring it out?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And once they're around long enough and they see that, trolls don't last usually longer than about 5 minutes before they are evicted from the group, and how other members respond to people that do post those kind of experiences, it makes them much more comfortable to be able to open up and share those experiences.
Well, that's absolutely fascinating. So do you plan on just keeping the group growing? I have to ask you one thing. How did you manage to get such large membership in such a short amount of time? That's quite an accomplishment on Facebook. You do realize that, right?
Well, actually, I didn't. I honestly don't know how it grew that fast. When I created the group, in the back of my mind, I thought, well, we're going to have maybe 200, 250 people, and we'll have nice little chats. And, all of a sudden it just took off, and it continues to grow. So, like I say, I think we picked up, about 5,000 people in about 7 months.
That's amazing.
So there's a lot of people that want to, share that kind of stuff. And if anything at all makes it even more popular is the fact that we think that respect and being courteous is a big deal, and that we want to treat people the right way.
So far you have had really good luck then, and has it helped with the sharing of information? That question, then I have another one or another statement.
Yeah, it has. It has helped with the sharing, and we don't even have a problem if other people go out and create a group of their own, because, the more people that are out there talking about this, Darren, the more pressure there is on governments of the world to start opening up their files and disclosing what's really going on.
Well, I keep hoping that someone from one of these groups will actually run for office at some point, and we can get some actual UFO people in the government instead of all these, I don't know what you call them, that seem to be just dreadfully frightened of saying or having anything to do with it. Maybe they're afraid they won't get reelected if they do.
Yes. I look at them more like fundraisers. That seems like all they're ever doing is trying to get you to send them money.
Well, I've worked in politics and government for 12 years, and I could tell you what I think of politicians, but I think everyone already knows. But when you work directly with it, you realize that the things that they do while they're in office are to save their own skin and get reelected. And hopefully someone will say a little bit more. And we have someone that did. And right after this next commercial break, I'm going to ask you what you think about the comments that John Podesta made on Twitter last week, I believe it was. And I also have a short clip from 2007. And so that will come right after this commercial break. And thanks for all of you who support us by watching our commercials that help pay for the production. We'll be right back. And we're back on Planet Plus. I have a guest with me today, Steve Barone. Steve comes from Las Vegas, Nevada in the United States of America. And Steve has seen a couple of UFO sightings himself and operates one of the largest UFO groups on Facebook in the United States. Excuse me. Now, Steve, I just want to play a clip, and you'll be able to listen to it. The folks at home will be able to see it, and I just got to look on my list here to make sure I hit the right button. But this is John Podesta, and this is back in 2007 at the Press Club. Now, this is when he was Clinton's right-hand man. And let's just have a look and see what he said there, and then we'll discuss what he said recently.
I think it's time to open the books on questions that have remained in the dark, on the question of government investigations of UFOs. It's time to find out what the truth really is that's out there. We ought to do it really because it's right. We ought to do it because the American people, quite frankly, can handle the truth. And we ought to do it because it's the law.
So, John says that he thinks the people can handle the truth and that they ought to do it because it's the law. Now, recently we know that he sent out a tweet, and in that tweet he regretted that he didn't have more to do with releasing that information under your current president, Mr. Obama. What do you think about the comments that he made, and that someone that is so high up and respected in your government would make a comment like that? What's that telling you, Steve?
Well, Darren, I think that's telling me that we're ready. I admire him for having the bravery to come forward and say that, because a lot of people are going to hear him saying that, and that may even be a catalyst to get other people that are higher up in our society to come forward and press for the same thing. So like I say, I'm all for it. Anybody that's a truth teller, I have to tip my hat to them. And
no, I'm
so
a Canadian,
I'm glad
Steve.
there are people like that.
Steve, I'm a Canadian, and so with American roots, most of my family are in the United States, and I actually have a relative that's a senator in Washington. And you can look him up. He has the same last name as me. And I keep thinking to myself, okay, here in Canada, our government has pretty much come out and said, yes, they exist. We know the Americans have had contact with them. We know others have had contact with them. The British have released a lot of information. The Germans have released a lot of information. It seems like there's everyone on the bandwagon except for maybe the Americans. Why do you suppose that is? What do you think it is that they're trying, or is it this that they're so used to the establishment that they can't see outside the box? What do you think?
Yeah, Darren. You know, of course, this is only my own opinion. But, you know, America, you know, we're supposedly the lone superpower right now. In my mind, and from things that I've read and learned, you know, over my lifetime, I believe Roswell happened. I believe that we have been reverse engineering these crashed vehicles, and maybe a lot more of them than people are really aware of, and that some of the technology that we have gleaned from some of these finds, not only is it incredible, but it may be far more incredible than people might even understand. But I don't see how the United States can all of a sudden, you know, call a big press conference and say, listen, you know, we've been lying through our teeth to you for the last 70 years.
Well, isn't that the one thing we know for sure the governments do? It's
Well,
lied to us.
I think most people would agree with that.
I shouldn't say that too loud.
But, you know, like I say, I mean, I've been really digging in deep here the last 8 months, and I've seen things that are shocking. Just technology and things that are flying around in the sky. And, you know, I think our government knows all about it. And, you know, when it's like a Pandora's box. I mean, once they open it, they're not going to be able to close it.
No, not very easily, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think they would want to, would they? See, you know, if I was a government leader in the world right now, here's what would go through my head. And maybe if any of them watch the program, maybe they'll clue in here. The world's in a mess. We got a bunch of political leaders in there right now who are, you know, we got rumors of wars that are going on. Now the Russians and the Americans are starting to have a little bit of friction between them again. The economies all around the world are kind of in a mess, and the budgets of the governments have been fumbled for years. Don't you think they'd want something like E.T. that would take everyone's attention off of all the nasty work that they're doing, all the mess-ups and the endless mess that government seems to produce? And it doesn't seem to matter what colors they're flying. Whoever gets in there, it just keeps carrying on to the next person. With something like E.T., and I know this is pure speculation, and would something like E.T. have the potential of changing that, making people see that there's something more than their own government, that their country or their hockey team or whatever it is that concerns their life is really minuscule in the whole picture of things? What are your thoughts?
Well, absolutely, I think that would. But, you know, at the same time, then it opens up a lot more questions. Like, what if we could have had free energy around the world going all the way back to Nikola Tesla? You know, what if we didn't need oil? I mean, there are so many things where I could see that it could also go the other way. I mean, here we are polluting our skies and our planet. And, you know, this goes back to what I said earlier. You're not answering these questions. I mean, what if we could have stopped polluting the planet 30 years ago and got away from, you know, oil? And, you know, no oil, no problem in the Middle East with all these wars. So, yeah, like I say, I think it's such a big secret that even if it does start coming out, it's going to just drip out. Here in the United States, there's never going to be this grand meeting where everything is admitted at once. But yeah,
so you don't think they'll ever hold hearings in Washington where they have a full disclosure and the government releases all the information? You don't think that'll ever happen?
I suppose that's possible, but I'm a little bit jaded right now. Even with little things, it's hard to get anything done here. I heard a saying there the other day that about Americans is that, and I love the country, I'm a veteran, but we have to try all the wrong things first before we finally just get it right and do the right thing.
Oh, so what you're saying there is that Americans are humans just like the rest of us around the world?
Yes.
Well, there are those that wouldn't believe that, right? I mean, they think they look to America for everything. And that's a good thing because in many ways America is a leader. But there's a lot of other countries that contribute some great things as well, and we don't want to take away from them. But we have to face it. The United States is the economic power on the planet. They're also the military power on the planet. I know there are those that are trying to do their best to change all of that. But I think it's rather interesting that the people that really have the most power are the people who are saying the least. I don't know what the correlation is there, but if Stephen Bassett and his group in Washington, D.C. have their say, there will be some hearings there eventually. And the one thing that I found was really interesting, and maybe some of my American viewers don't even know this, and that's that the disclosure hearings that were held in Washington, D.C., did you know that those hearings were funded by Canadians?
I wasn't aware of that.
It definitely was. The funds came from Canada to hold that. And one of the reasons being is because up here in Canada, the climate when it comes to UFOs, I think, is considerably different. Stephen Bassett and his group are going to be, and Paul Hellyer and several others, many who are coming on the show soon, are making a tour across Canada doing the Knowledge Tour again. Now, they did this last year, and it was quite successful, and they're going to try it again. Now, I think it's interesting is that a lot of the people that are going to speak there, or some of the people that are going to speak there, are Americans. And they're coming up to Canada to have this because it is so well received up here. Now, one of the other things that I'd like to talk about just briefly is what do you think when you're the operator of a group, and I know you have a lot of fans, you have thousands that are following you there on Facebook. What do you think the future is going to bring for UFO study? Is it going to be governments that are going to work together, or people in a position of authority, or are we going to have to leave it up to people like you and myself who just pick up the ball and say, hey, we're going to run with this and see what we find? Look into your crystal ball for a second, Steve, and see what you can think. Yeah.
Well, off the top of my head, Darren, I would always trust the people before I trust governments. I hate to say it, but we can't get our government to even work together, let alone with any other government right now. So yeah, I think it's all about the people. We are all walking around with this technology in our pockets now where, we are starting to see a lot more videos, photographs, things like that are coming out. And, there's probably going to get, it's probably going to get to a point where, they just can't ignore it any longer. But yeah, I would always put my money on the people.
Well, I think you're safe to put your money on the people because I guess when it comes to government, really, I know the government leaders haven't quite figured this out yet, but all that money they have comes from the people. And hopefully, like I say, my wish is that someone would run for office, I don't care what country they're in, and make it to leader and president, prime minister, queen, I don't care what it is, and start spilling the beans. We don't need to wait for the Americans to come around to it. Let's get a competition here going on. Right now we have the Russians that are, kind of in a little bit of a mess over there in the Ukraine, or potential of a mess, and we have the Americans that are on the other side with the Ukrainians. Instead of going to battle, why don't we have a contest and see which one of them can tell us the most, and we'll forget about the war. And maybe if we spent a little bit more time on this planet looking at things like that, maybe the things like neighbors not getting along or something like that between two countries would become less important. And we might look at it as, you know, we're here in this universe. Do you think we will ever see a time like that?
I certainly hope so. You know, one of the things that I love about my group is, you know, these very simple rules that we established of avoiding religion and politics, and just you know, being courteous and kind to others is huge. You've seen the last few elections here, presidential elections in the United States, of how divisive it is. And when you remove those things, all of a sudden you find that you actually like this person. You have a lot in common. And as long as you keep away from talking about those things, that we can all work together. And it's not just Democrats, independents, Republicans. It's people across the world. I wish I had an easy way to see how many different countries are represented in this group, because I see them coming in from all over the place. And, you know, what makes that even better is the technology that is there in the whatever browser you're using to translate what they are talking about, so that we can share that. And it opens up a lot of doors.
Now, Steve, you mentioned that you might, if you go into your demographics on Facebook, I think you can see your countries that they come from. Now, don't quote me on that. I know I have that information on my own website, but I do it with my own counters and my own demographics tally taker there, I guess you might call it. But if you look at my site, and I'm sure yours is very similar, it puts a dot on the map every time someone comes from a particular city, and nearly the entire world is covered. So I think there's tremendous interest to find out what's going on there. It's just that the internet really is still new, and people are just learning how to use that for that purpose. And groups like yours, there are lots of them. And I think they make a huge contribution. As a matter of fact, in just one moment, turn the mic off there while I cough. One of the reasons that I decided to change the format of UFO Planet and make it Planet Plus is because I take a look at the information that's coming over my Facebook feed every day, and there's literally hundreds of postings that come from multiple groups. We have everything from sightings to opinions to stories. And I thought, well, Facebook moves pretty fast. So if you don't see it and you come back 20 minutes later, either you're scrolling for half an hour to see something that come up in the morning. But in any case, there's so much of it coming through that I decided that it was time to look more at instead of the UFO Planet things, to look more at the Planet Plus things. And that's where we're going to take a look and more in depth. I don't think so much anymore that it's the study of UFOs is really about lights in the sky so much anymore, because I mean, that's still important, don't get me wrong, but I think we need to look beyond the lights. We need to talk more to the people who are filming these lights to find out the true experience. And we need to talk more to the people who are doing the investigations. And we need to keep the pressure on the government so that they keep things moving along too. Eventually, we're going to have a generation that's in there where all the old fogies that, you know, want to keep everything a secret, maybe they'll be gone. And we'll have people with a new mindset. You know, let's put it this way. If we wait another 20 years, we'll have kids that grew up on Facebook who post everything that happens in their life. And maybe they'll feel the same way about government. So what do you think that your group is going to continue to make a contribution to this? And have you encouraged your membership to go sign the petition that they have in Washington, and to see if we can't get those guys to start talking.
Absolutely. That's a huge thing. I encourage everybody to get involved. And I've signed that petition. We've made that the feature post more than once in the group. I'm sure you would know this too, Darren, is that, when you have a lot of members, the overwhelming majority of them are silent. You don't ever hear from them. I'm not 100% sure why they come or why they want to be part of the group. Maybe they're just coming and absorbing.
Some people like to be observers, and that's all.
Yeah, they're observers. But we put that information out there, and it's really important that everybody goes and signs that. We need to put the pressure where the pressure needs to be applied, because I'm not getting any younger, and I want to have a few answers before I kick the bucket.
Steve, you told me you were just 29.
Yeah, well, that was 31 years ago. How about that one?
Well, that's really good, and it's excellent that you're so very interested. What we really need is a lot of people just like you. Because I know one thing, the only person making money off of your Facebook wall is Mr. Zuckerberg and his investors. So you put in a lot of time and effort with no monetary return. You simply do it because you have an interest. And those, I find, are the people who do the best job, because they definitely, they're not looking for their next meal ticket. They're just looking for the next good information to share, and that sometimes makes a big difference.
Yeah, I obviously never made a penny. I spend money. I went out and bought cameras and tripods and memory cards and spending gas money going places. But like I say, it's all about getting the information out there, and I love it. I forgot what it's like to even watch television, because this is way more interesting.
Oh, isn't it?
I honestly believe, Darren, that the overwhelming majority of people on this planet are good people, and that they want good things. And, it's just unfortunate that, in our mass media, that the things that sell and make money for those companies are the things that are violent or sad, or, I wish they would cover things like this a lot more, because even with things that I've seen, you try getting somebody to cover a UFO sighting or something, and they treat you like you're, their redheaded stepchild and just blow you off. But at the same time, they'll go do a nice long article on some lady who has 50 cats.
Oh, I know. Or, the funny thing is, and I can relate to that 100%. Many of my viewers know that my main job was with the Alberta Police Report System. And quite often on there, we used to post the UFO Planet shows, because I have 80,000 people who follow me on social media on various different pages and mediums, and about 60,000 of those are actually people who follow me for the police stuff. 20,000 roughly follow me for the UFO stuff. So I thought, well, here's a good way. We'll just blow this out over my social media channels for the police. And when we put up the first episode, we had several people email us and say, oh, come on, you guys have lost it. Like, there are already people who don't like the police to start with. And so you add UFOs to the mix, and it becomes to them, I guess, terrible. And when the Royal Canadian Mounted Police figured out who I was, that, the same guy who works with them every day, on the media end of things, is also the guy that's hosting the UFO show. And I thought, well, after it was the command center in Edmonton that called me up, K Division Command Center, and we were talking about it on the phone, because they had asked me if that was me, and I said, well, yeah, it is. And first I could hear some laughter in the control center, because I imagine they were all on speakerphone and they were talking to this UFO guy. And we took care of what business we needed to take care of. I believe it was for a murder, someone that had contacted me to admit to a murder. And we took care of that business. And then about 2 days later, in my email arrives a video from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And this wasn't to Alberta Police Report, where they email me hundreds of times a day. It was to UFO Planet. They submitted it. And I thought, well, here they are. There's obviously someone out there who thinks this is okay and didn't laugh in the control room. But I thought it was interesting because it was the first time that my two 180-degree different jobs meshed together. And I just thought it was hilarious that I got something from the police at all. But Steve, well, that's our time's about up there. I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining me today and having a really pleasant conversation with you. I really look forward to talking to you more in the future, and I want you to keep me informed if you have some absolutely fascinating information come across your channel there, and we'll have you back on in the future as a regular to talk about some of the things that you guys are discovering in your group there. And you've also been instrumental in helping me with some interviews. So that you will see those coming up here right away. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. And keep doing the fantastic work. And just before I let you say goodbye there, I just wanted to encourage you that when you get negative comments and you get negative vibes back from people, just ignore it. And it will go away.
That's some excellent advice, Darren.
Well, if you don't feed a snake, they die.
Well, hey, thank you very much. It's been wonderful. I mean, when I met you last year, I felt like I was talking to an old friend. And it's been a while since I talked to you last. But, I wish you nothing but success with UFO Planet Plus. I think it's going to be a big deal. And I think you're going to have some major people come on your show.
Well, we're certainly hoping for it, but we're also going to stick. We're going to still have on just the regular people that have some amazing things going on in their life or have witnessed some amazing things. But it's been a real pleasure, and I agree with you. It's like we've known each other for a long time when we've actually only spoken a couple of times, 3 times to be exact. And I'm still holding you to it that when you come vacationing up here in Canada that you come on over and I'll take you and your good wife for a Timmy's.
Fantastic, Darren. Yeah, Canada's our next big trip. So we will be knocking on your door.
Sounds good. We'll see you then. And you take care. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Darren. Good luck.
Thank you. Well, we still have more on today's program here, and I just got to find the right button so I can turn off the guest microphone. And just a little wave there to Steve. Steve's going to stay with us in the background and just seeing what happens on the show. But I came across this video today that I think some of you guys would really like to have a look at. It's a video of the back side of the moon. Now, what they have done, the Goddard Space Center intellectuals there have taken and they've taken all the survey data that they had from probes that have been around the other side of the moon, and they have created what the moon looks like. So we're going to take a look at this little video clip, if I can find it here, and we'll see what happens.
I think it's time to open the books.
And that's the wrong clip, so as you can tell, I didn't write everything down on here. And I might not even have loaded it in, so it looks like we're going to have to wait for the next show. I'm sorry, but when you do a program live and you have a whole bunch of new equipment, sometimes you miss out on things. So we'll have that on the next program. I have an interesting clip. It's about 3 minutes long where you can see the backside of the moon. And I know there's a lot of people who expect to see bases, UFO bases on the backside of the moon, but I'm going to do a spoiler right now. You don't see any of them. At least if you do, they didn't tell us about them anyway. And but that'll be coming up very soon. Hopefully we'll work out some of the kinks in the program in the meantime, and we'll get things running just exactly perfect. We'll have some excellent guests, and one of them might be you. If you have any information, don't hesitate to email me. You're going to see that information on the screen really soon, and I appreciate all of you for tuning in. Thank you for watching Planet Plus. I'll see you again on the next episode.